Hi and welcome. I'm Andy Miocha and you are watching A News. Let's have a look at the headlines. The US, Ukraine and Russia meet in Abu Dhabi for their first no trilateral talks since the war began. European leaders say Greenland's future is non-negotiable following emergency talks in Brussels. The US unveils plans for a post-war Gaza. Thank you for tuning in. Trilateral Ukraine-US-Russia talks have begun in the United Arab Emirates. The talks are scheduled to last 2 days and follow meetings between US and Ukrainian presidents in Davos and between US envoys and Russia's president in Moscow. For more on the first known trilateral peace talks since the war began, we go to Nick Harper in Washington.
Well, this is a very significant step on the path to peace. For the very first time, all three countries are sitting down together. There's been plenty of talks between the US and Russia, the US and Ukraine, but we haven't seen Ukraine and Russia communicating directly. And after nearly 4 years of conflict, there is some real hope that we might now see some momentum towards achieving some sort of peace deal. But will we have conversations or confrontations in Abu Dhabi? That is not clear. The US, though, very much trying to act as the glue, holding all of this together. Now, we've seen plenty of diplomacy this week. Donald Trump met with Volodymyr Zelensky in Davos, Switzerland. We had a US negotiating team heading to Moscow to meet with Vladimir Putin. So therefore, there's lots of momentum. There's lots of hope. But achieving that breakthrough, I think, is still going to be very difficult because there are some major sticking points at play. And just ahead of these talks kicking off this Friday, we heard from the Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov. And he maintained that Russia's position is still about achieving total control of the Donbass region, including territory that Ukraine is still holding on to. Dmitry Peskov said that this was a very important condition. He said that Ukrainian armed forces must leave the territory of Donbass, but that is a red line for Kyiv. They do not want to hand over the whole of that region to Moscow. There's also the issue of security guarantees. That's something that Ukraine wants to safeguard themselves from possible future invasion from Russia. They want both the US but also European allies to be able to provide those security guarantees. On Thursday, Volodymyr Zelensky said that a framework agreement on security guarantees had been written up, not yet signed, but there had been good progress on that with the United States. And one other sticking point has also come into play, and that is frozen Russian assets, about $5 billion worth. Moscow is suggesting that that money could be used for reconstruction in its own territory. President Zelensky, though, however, has called this nonsense. This is day one, potentially of 2 days of talks. It depends really on how the first day goes and whether we head into a second day as well. Still waiting for updates to see how all of this is unfolding and whether or not progress has actually been made. Nick Harper for A News in Washington, D.C.
Ahead of the latest talks on ending the war in Ukraine, attacks continued. One person was killed in the southeast of the country and 20 others were injured. In the Zaporizhia region, 4 strikes hit a local town. Homes, schools and critical infrastructure were damaged. Russia says it targeted energy sites supporting Ukraine's military, while Ukraine reported striking a Russian oil facility and military targets in Crimea. Both sides say multiple drones and missiles were intercepted. European leaders declared that the EU will stand firm against pressure following an emergency summit on Thursday. They insisted that Greenland's status and territorial integrity are not open to negotiation. A News' William Denslow has more on that in Brussels.
At the conclusion of this emergency meeting of European leaders, Antonio Costa, the president of the European Council, said that Europe would not give in to any forms of coercion. This meeting was called after US President Donald Trump had threatened to impose duties from February on 8 European powers unless the United States was given control of Greenland, the semi-autonomous Danish territory. The message we heard from a number of European leaders is that Europe's unity, strength and resolve helped back down the US president and sent a strong message that that would essentially be a non-negotiable and that territorial integrity is absolutely vital going forward. There is also the other track that Europe has done more in recent days, including on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Davos to persuade US President Donald Trump that more is being done to achieve Arctic security. Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission President, has ploughed to ramp up the defensive posture, collective security in the Arctic region. That's something we also know that Denmark is keen on, saying that Denmark is pursuing a permanent NATO presence on Greenland. There are, though, huge questions going forward. On the issue of Greenland, it's being reported that the US wants sovereign military bases there. Mette Frederiksen, though, the Danish Prime Minister, speaking here in Brussels on Thursday, said that that was a red line and that conversations about sovereignty of Greenland would not be up for discussion. So going forward, big questions about what this exactly means, whether NATO can do enough to persuade the Trump administration, whether the EU can do enough to persuade the Trump administration that they are taking collective security seriously without the need for the US to have a permanent sovereignty in Greenland. And of course, there are these rattling issues about what these tariff threats have meant for the transatlantic relationship. We know that the European Parliament will continue its discussions on the US-EU trade agreement next week. And essentially, the message from European powers is that it has been a bruising few days for this incredibly vital relationship, but they believe that unity is the key to progress ties going forward. William Denslow, Frey News, Brussels.
This year's World Economic Forum in Davos saw world leaders tackle some pressing global issues, but the week has been very tense. From the highly anticipated speech of the US president backing down from his threats over Greenland to other leaders signaling major changes to the existing world order.
World leaders wrapped up a week of high-level diplomacy at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, where geopolitics, security and the global economy dominated discussions. The yearly event brought together nearly 65 heads of state and government alongside hundreds of business leaders against a backdrop of rising global tensions and rapid technological change. One of the most closely watched issues was Greenland. US President Donald Trump stepped back from earlier forceful rhetoric about acquiring the Danish territory. Talks with NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte resulted in a broad framework for future cooperation on Arctic security, though details remain unresolved. Trump also used the forum to launch his new Board of Peace, a controversial initiative aimed at addressing global conflicts, including Gaza. He hosted a signing ceremony for the board's charter, but many Western allies did not participate, and questions remain over its mandate and membership. Ukraine was another major focus at Davos. Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky held talks on the war with Russia, describing the meeting as positive and citing progress on a draft document covering security guarantees. Zelensky also delivered a compelling address, urging European nations to do more to support Ukraine and criticising what he described as slow and fragmented responses to Russian aggression. The forum also featured various discussions on economic cooperation, innovation and geopolitical risks, underscoring how global leaders are navigating an increasingly contested international landscape.
The US has unveiled a plan to rebuild Gaza, including skyscrapers, new housing and major infrastructure after 2 years of war. But the United Nations warns that urgent humanitarian needs on the ground remain severe.
Skyscrapers in Gaza. That's President Donald Trump's plan for the Strip, with up to 180 high-rise towers in a sweeping reconstruction vision. The United States has outlined an ambitious blueprint to rebuild Gaza from the ground up, following 2 years of conflict.
It's going to be a great plan.
It was presented at the World Economic Forum in Davos by Trump and his newly created Board of Peace, which is tasked with ending the war between Israel and Hamas and overseeing reconstruction and development. Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, presented designs showing modern housing estates, industrial zones, and tourism areas along the coast. It includes a new seaport and airport near the Egyptian border, as well as 2 major urban projects known as New Rafah and New Gaza. New Rafah would include more than 100,000 permanent homes, around 200 schools and 75 medical facilities.
Going forward, number one thing is going to be security. Obviously, we've been working very closely with the Israelis to figure out a way through de-escalation. And the next phase is working with Hamas on demilitarization, which I'll talk about in a second. But without security, nobody's going to make investments. Nobody's going to come, build there. We need investments in order to start giving jobs.
According to Kushner, funding is expected to come initially from governments, followed by private investors. Before that vision is realized, shorter-term goals for the first 100 days are more immediate. They include restoring basic services such as water, electricity and sewage systems, reopening hospitals and bakeries, and allowing more goods to enter the Strip.
Since Sunday, as of yesterday, our partners leading on emergency shelter assistance have reached over 13,000 households, distributing hundreds of tents and tarpaulins. Our partners distributing hundreds of tents. Yeah. Our partners also continue to distribute mattresses, sleeping bags, blankets, warm clothes, cooking. It's not funny. Cooking utensils as well as solar lights. Our partners responsible for site management report that due to the capacity and funding constraints, they are currently able to provide support in just about 40% of the existing 970 displacement sites that exist across Gaza.
Displaced residents in Khan Yunis have expressed skepticism that the initiative would bring tangible change. Several said bombardment and insecurity persist, despite announcements of ceasefire phases and reconstruction plans.
The required 1-year notice period for the United States to leave the World Health Organization came to an end on Thursday. Donald Trump signed an executive order last year to withdraw the United States from the World Health Organization on his first day back in office. This triggered a 1-year withdrawal process under the WHO's charter. But according to the organization, all membership dues need to be settled. Currently, the U.S. owes $260 million in unpaid dues for 2024 and 2025. In other news, Spain's rail network is facing renewed scrutiny after a 4th accident in less than a week. On Thursday, a commuter train collided with an arm of a crane in the southeast of the country, injuring a dozen people. It followed a high-speed train collision in the southern Andalusia region, which killed at least 43 people 4 days earlier.
In Brussels, European Union leaders held a minute of silence on Thursday in honor of victims from the train accidents in Spain as they met for talks on EU-US relations. The President of the European Council, Antonio Costa, expressed his condolences to the families and loved ones of those killed. The latest and 4th incident in less than a week was a commuter train that collided with a crane in southeastern Spain on Thursday. Officials said several people suffered minor injuries in the crash near the port city of Cartagena in Murcia region. It's after the first collision between 2 high-speed trains last Sunday near Ademuz in the south that killed at least 43 people. 2 days later, a commuter train derailed after a containment wall fell on the track due to heavy rain near the city of Barcelona. It killed the driver and seriously injured 4 passengers. On that day, the main train drivers' union called a nationwide strike over safety standards after that. Then there was a second less serious collision in the northeastern Catalonia region on the same day. train drivers have announced strike action for the 9th, 10th and 11th of February, demanding stronger safety measures and improved infrastructure maintenance amid growing public concern over Spain's rail network.
Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi has dissolved the lower house of parliament. The move sets the stage for a snap election on February 8th.
Japanese voters will head to the polls on February 8th after Prime Minister Takaichi dissolved the lower house, seeking a stronger mandate amid high personal approval ratings. The vote will decide all 465 seats in the chamber and marks her first electoral test since becoming Japan's first female prime minister in October. Official campaigning begins on January 27th. If the ruling coalition of Takaichi's Liberal Democratic Party and the Japan Innovation Party wins a majority, she will be formally confirmed as prime minister in a special parliamentary session. Takaichi has pledged to ease pressure on households facing rising living costs, including suspending an 8% tax on food for 2 years. Inflation has shown signs of easing, with consumer prices rising 2.4% in December, supported by government subsidies for electricity and gas. The snap election comes at a sensitive time, as Parliament usually debates the national budget in February. Critics warn the move could delay approval of a record 122.3 trillion yen budget designed to support the economy and boost defense spending.
Still in Japan, the restart of the world's largest nuclear power plant was suspended. It was stopped just a day after it went online for the first time in 14 years. The Kashiwazaki Kariwa plant had been closed since the 2011 Fukushima disaster, but operations to relaunch it began on Wednesday after it received the final green light from the nuclear regulator. The operator, the Tokyo Electric Power Company, said that an alarm sounded during the reactor startup, causing it to suspend operations, adding that there is no telling how long it will take to resolve the problem. After a short break, we'll be taking a closer look at the trilateral US-Ukraine-Russia talks and possibilities of a peace settlement in current circumstances. Do stay with us. Welcome back. As the trilateral Ukraine-US-Russia talks are underway in the United Arab Emirates, joining us from Lisbon to talk on what a settlement in the current conditions might look like is Lieutenant General Marco Serogna. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, given the circumstances on the front lines and the battlefield and Russia's request for the entirety of Donbas, what do you see as a palatable outcome for Ukraine on this hardest issue, the territory?
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me today. So let's see. It's a big problem. As Donald Trump said, it's just 1 mile that is left to end the possible ceasefire agreement. So, but the main issue is the demand of the Russians about having the remainder of the Donbas, more or less 5,000 square kilometers, and the Ukrainian President Zelensky that told he told in the last days that this would be impossible without at least a referendum, and we know that from the polls that the Ukrainians are not very keen to give up this land. That of course hundreds, thousands maybe of people of Ukrainians have died trying to defend this piece of land. So we know that the US has drawn some options: demilitarized zone, a free economic zone, initially to the remain of the Donbas. Some issues remain about that. Who will be in charge of that land? Russians, the Ukrainians, international. So it's some of the main points that are not yet solved. Nevertheless, Zelensky come back with another proposal. Okay, if the Russians want for us to go back outside of Donbass, okay, we'll ask them also in reference to the contact line to withdraw the same miles or something like that. So it's a kind of demilitarized zone, and the Russians should be back also from the front line the same kilometers, 30 kilometers or something like that, and that could be in that area could be built a demilitarized zone with a free economic zone. It looks like that the Russians are not going to accept that. They don't want to go back from the front line. So the discussion is about that essentially. Let's see if some one of the parts are going to give up something. I don't suppose. We don't know if the United States have another option to get more closer the two parties. But it's difficult. I suppose it's difficult to get to have an agreement on that. Let's see what. Nevertheless, the discussions are planned to go through all the weekend, as we know. For the time being, is planned tomorrow also, but could last until Sunday, if the things goes. If
Indeed,
there is some room for discussions, of course.
Things are still in motion, but what we know so far, what we've heard earlier, is France and Britain pledging to send troops in Ukraine on the ground once a peace deal with Russia is reached. But we are yet to see the details of the security guarantees that the United States would provide. What would be enough to deter the Russians from invading again?
Well, the main point is in that singular point, I suppose Zelensky is right. The Americans should give the backstop. So all the framework of the security guarantees have to be signed, and of course the Americans are not going to give land troops, we know. But at least what we call the backstop, the nuclear capability, the intelligence, the drones, long-range drones capabilities for intelligence and for monitoring the ceasefire, the Americans are able to do it. And, of course, the guarantee that in the case of an invasion of Russia, the United States could also deploy the ground and joint forces to help to expel the Russians. So it's let's see how the things are. And the security guarantees have three pillars, more or less. We can say that the Ukrainian armed forces, that is the first guarantee to have the Ukrainians with the robust armed forces and capable to deter the Russians. The second one is an international monetary force in the front line, and that could have not only Europeans but others, and that is possible. And also other pillars, the European capabilities that should be provided to bridge the gap between the Ukrainian armed forces and the backstop of the Americans, and that could be air force, airplanes, missile defense, and other things that Europeans can give to the Ukrainians. So it's a full package. Zelensky said yesterday in Davos that the things are decided, just left signed for that when the American president wants. So that is the main portion. We know from the very beginning that the Russians didn't agree with this framework, this format, because the Russians they want to have a say in the security guarantees mechanism, as they did in the several Minsk agreements that have been signed in the past. Of course, the United States and the Ukrainians and Europeans don't want that Moscow could interfere in the security guarantees provided to Ukraine. So that is, let's see how far Donald Trump is keen to have the agreement of the Russian president in this package, and that is something that's not clear. Nevertheless, we know that most of the things are agreed, but Donald Trump has not been very keen to sign that before this phase, the last phase of the discussion. So most probably you want an agreement from Vladimir Putin to the security guarantees package.
We've heard another interesting thing from Zelensky in Davos. He spoke of a need for a united European force, saying that the Ukrainian army could become its foundation. How has this idea of European armed forces been seen in professional circles, especially now with all the circumstances between transatlantic allies?
Let's see. One of a European force, joint force, armed forces, European. It has not been possible to reach an agreement between the Europeans on that. So the format is more a sum of the capabilities of the European armies, of European countries' armies and air force and navies, more than a multinational or European force. So that has not been possible to agree on that due to the several differences between the countries. Something that lots of things that are linked to history of Europe, and we know that some of the countries now we are all friends, but in the past the things has not been like as such. So what Zelensky give an idea, I suppose, is try to with these dynamics of the security guarantees in Europe, try to build a more robust and capable European army, so to speak. I suppose at this point in time, it's just an idea, maybe, because it's impossible to have a single army without a European Union more federated. So the more like a federation and less like a union of states that are independent. So I suppose that we have to progress in the political side of the European Union come through a federation as the United States. And at that point in time, I suppose it will be possible to have a single European army. Other than that, I suppose that will be difficult in the next times ahead.
And finally, we know that Kiev's allies, Washington, all the European countries, have been providing support to Ukraine for almost 4 years now. But how much would you say that Ukraine's experience on the battlefield has meant for its allies when it comes to adapting to modern warfare?
It's very important. So a lot of European countries have people in Ukraine trying to figure out the change, the new dynamics of this kind of warfare, and these lessons identified are becoming lessons learned and being incorporated in the tactics, in the doctrine, in the organization, and trying to adapt the military capabilities to this new kind of warfare. And other than that, we know that most probably the Ukrainian army, it's now maybe the best capable army in Europe, able to fight with success, and able to fight this new kind of war with drones and less we can see less tanks, less armored vehicles, because armored vehicles and tanks cannot run in the front line because they are almost immediately destroyed. So It's a new kind of war. It's a new kind of organization with a lot of technology, even in the front line. It's not technology at high echelons or hardware, so it's something that it changes every day. Every day they change the capability of the drones, the technologies, the systems are changing every day with the lessons learned. And so the Ukrainians could be, I suppose, if the other Europeans want to take advantage of their experience, I can say, the spin-off of the new Europeans, armies of the European countries, because it's very important, and they are able to do that, and it's important also for the other European, in the Europeans, and not only Europeans, everybody is with the highs in the military tactics and the capabilities that the both sides, not only the Ukrainians but also the Russians, are using on this new kind of war. The big problem is that it's not easy to adapt the European armies or armed forces immediately, because the need to produce several new equipments, several new capabilities, it's not immediate, we know. But the Ukrainians are now with a very robust defense industry, and they are, most of the biggest companies, defense companies in Europe are working with Ukrainians, or in Ukrainian or outside Ukrainian, but in joint venture. So the Ukrainians are very good in incorporating new technologies in old systems and modifying the things that have new disrupt capabilities. And with that know-how, they have been keen to somehow stay alive in the front line and trying to defend their own territory.
Lieutenant General Seronia, thank you so much for joining us and providing us with your insights.
Thank you very much.
Now, after a short break, we'll take a look at the major stories from the region. Stay with us. Welcome back. U.S. President Donald Trump has said he hopes to avoid new military action against Iran, adding that a, quote, big force is moving toward Iran and that he is watching the country very closely. Two U.S. officials have said an aircraft carrier strike group and other assets will arrive in the region in the coming days.
You know, we have a lot of ships going that direction, just in case. We have a big flotilla going in that direction, and we'll see what happens. We have a big force going toward Iran. I'd rather not see anything happen, but we're watching them very closely. I stopped 837 hangings on Thursday. If they would have been dead, every one of them would have been hung. This is like from 1,000 years ago. This is an ancient culture.
The United Nations says it has taken over management of detention sites in northeastern Syria after Kurdish-led forces guarding them withdrew following clashes with Syrian government troops. The facilities hold tens of thousands of women and children linked to the so-called Islamic State, raising concern over security and humanitarian access. The SDF pullback has affected major sites including Al-Hol, where Syrian government forces have now established a security perimeter and UN teams have begun assessments. However, they say that access remains restricted.
Our colleagues tell us that the situation in the camp remains rather tense and volatile, with reports of looting and burning. As a result, it was not possible for them to enter the camp itself. And this was the same situation today when they tried again.
Istanbul hosted the second meeting of the Balkan Peace Platform, bringing together diplomats from across the Western Balkans. Chaired by Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, the talks focused on regional security, energy cooperation, and migration challenges. Adam Morrow has more.
Istanbul on Friday hosted the second meeting of the Balkan Peace Platform, drawing top diplomats from across the Balkan region. At Friday's meeting, which was chaired by Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, Participants discussed a range of issues, including joint border management, energy security, regional transport corridors, and means of combating undocumented cross-border migration. According to the Turkish Foreign Ministry, Fidan held separate bilateral meetings with his Balkan counterparts on the sidelines of the event. Details of the bilateral meetings were not immediately available, but diplomatic sources said they focus mainly on enhancing bilateral ties within multilateral frameworks. The Foreign Minister of Greece, whose relations with Turkey have long been strained due to disagreements over Cyprus, did not take part in Friday's Istanbul meeting. Nevertheless, Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis is slated to visit Ankara next month for high-level talks with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Earlier this week, the Turkish and Greek deputy foreign ministers met in Athens, where they discussed ways of enhancing relations between the two countries. Turkey has long sought to position itself as a stabilizing force in the Balkans, a region historically known for its complex political and ethnic landscape. The first meeting of the Balkan Peace Platform was held in Istanbul last July, with the aim of fostering dialogue, building trust, and encouraging cooperation among Balkan states. This is Adam Maro for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Vahid Jalalzadeh assessed the latest unrest in Iran and commented on U.S. President Donald Trump's remarks about troop deployment in the Middle East during a press conference in Baku. He stressed that any military action would be met with a firm response and could have wider regional consequences. Our Aysel Ibrahimova reports.
Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Vahid Jalalzadeh held a press conference in Baku with Iran's ambassador to Azerbaijan, Mujtaba Demirchulu, saying the visit aimed to brief Azerbaijan's leadership on recent developments in Iran. Jalalzadeh said Tehran views the unrest as part of a broader confrontation following a 12-day war, claiming it followed a scenario prepared by the United States. He noted that the protests were initially driven by economic pressure voiced by traders in central Tehran. According to him, senior officials, including President Masoud Pezeshkian, met with protesters whose representatives were later invited to cabinet-level discussions and reported improved understanding with authorities. He also claimed the 8-9 January protests had similarities to ISIS-linked actions, and said forensic evidence showed some fatal bullets were not fired by Iranian police. Commenting on the US President Donald Trump's statements about troop deployments, Jalalzadeh said Iran does not trust such remarks and warned that any attack would trigger stronger response, adding that Iran's armed forces are on heightened readiness. He stressed that military action against Iran would destabilize the region, a message regional states are conveying to Washington, and concluded that while Iran seeks dialogue, any aggression would have serious consequences.
Baku is hosting the Rising Light photography exhibition by world-renowned photojournalist Reza Degati. The exhibition on Azerbaijan's culture, people, and heritage will be on display for nearly 2 months at the Heydar Aliyev International Airport.
The Rising Light, a photography exhibition by world-renowned photojournalist Reza Degati, known as Reza, welcomes international travelers with a visual story of Azerbaijan. The exhibition presents the country's rich heritage, people, and modern life. The project is supported by Azerbaijan Airlines, Heydar Aliyev International Airport, and Boeing, and is displayed in Terminal 1's International Zone in Baku. Choosing Heydar Aliyev International Airport as the exhibition venue is deeply symbolic.
I have been traveling for 45 years all over the world and spending a lot of time in the airport. So one of my dreams was always why there is no culture center, why there is no exhibition place in the airport. And finally, thanks to Azerbaijan Airlines and Boeing and this Heydar Aliyev International Airport, all of them, they get together and my dream became a reality.
Reza is a world-renowned photographer and photojournalist known for his powerful human stories. Over a career spanning more than 40 years, he has worked in over 100 countries. In Azerbaijan, Reza has documented key moments of the nation's recent history, including refugee experiences and the First and Second Karabakh Wars. The Rising Light exhibition includes a dedicated section focusing on UNESCO World Heritage Sites of Azerbaijan. Through 44 photographic works, visitors can see the walled city of Baku and the Shirvanshah's palace, the Gobustan rock art cultural landscape, and the Sheki Khan's palace.
The U.S. Special Envoy for South and Central Asia has arrived in Turkmenistan for a series of meetings with government officials and the business community. Our Fariza Kalimurzina has the details.
Turkmenistan is hosting a visit by U.S. Special Envoy for South and Central Asia, Sergio Gore. The program includes a series of high-level meetings with representatives of the Turkmen government and the business community. The talks focus on expanding bilateral cooperation, strengthening regional stability, and developing economic partnerships. Washington emphasizes its interest in new areas of engagement that, according to the U.S. side, would be mutually beneficial and contribute to security and prosperity across the region. The visit comes amid growing U.S. interest in Central Asia and increased diplomatic engagement with the region. For Turkmenistan, dialogue with the United States carries particular significance. While maintaining to its long-standing policy of neutrality, the country is also seeking new partnerships to strengthen its international position. In this context, energy and logistics are seen as key areas shaping the dialogue. Turkmenistan holds the world's fourth largest resource of natural gas, making it an important player in ensuring regional energy stability. At the same time, the agenda extends beyond economic issues. Experts point to Turkmenistan's long border with Afghanistan as a critical factor in regional security, as well as the importance of developing infrastructure and trade projects in border areas. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
We're going for a short break now. When we return, we will be taking a closer look at the deals and agreements Azerbaijan struck at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Do stay tuned. Welcome back to talk on the agreements Azerbaijan made at the World Economic Forum. We're joined by Nargiz Mammadova, an international relations expert at the STEM Center in Baku. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with the deals made by Azerbaijan's State Oil Fund. How significant is the fact that SOFA has formalized strategic partnerships with major global asset managers, Brookfield, BlackRock, and its subsidiary GIP, especially with the numbers going well over $1 billion?
Well, first of all, thank you for invitation. Let's start with the economic development of Azerbaijan, and we know how Azerbaijan is developing rapidly is oil and energy sector. First of all, the number of our potential customers, let's say, in Europe and out of the Europe is getting more and more year by year. Recently, Azerbaijan delivered gas to two new countries of the EU, is Germany and Austria. And first of all, we can talk about the representation of the oil and gas sector of Azerbaijan worldwide. And as we know, the World Economic Forum, first of all, it's economic forum. Of course, on the agenda will be lots of economic discussions and economic agreements. For example, the President Ilham Aliyev met with chairman and chief executive of JP Morgan, BlackRock, Dell Technologies, and lots of other companies, which actually, it's not like, I cannot say these companies are one country based. No, all these companies, first of all, are global companies, and they are open for a bigger partnership with Azerbaijan. Even let's talk about JP Morgan. They said that they wanted to leverage to up the relationship with and cooperation with Azerbaijan. Of course, so far, it's not just about oil and gas, it's also about green energy. And Azerbaijan has a great potential in green energy. We're not only producing green energy and not only have potential in the green energy, actually we can deliver green energy to the very many, I will say, to lots of regions. Starting from Central Asia, we, in the sidelines of the COP29, we have signed the trilateral agreement with Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan on the green energy transition, as well as we have some green energy agenda on the Black Sea, from Georgia to European market, as well as we can deliver it through Nakhchivan to Turkey and then to Europe, and as well as EU is also, as an institution, is very interested in cooperation on the green energy sector. And I think that the World Economic Forum is the best platform to make deals on that.
Let's just go back for a minute to Brookfield, BlackRock, and GIP. Now, these agreements, can you walk us through how these cooperations might impact Azerbaijan's international financial standing, be it through credit ratings or other important parameters?
Well, first of all, let's start with this, that these companies are major financial companies working on the best practices, with the best experience, with the best new realities of the financial systems. And let's take, for example, BlackRock, or let's take the Global Infrastructure Partners. They were signing of the document between Sofaz and BlackRock. And first of all, it's let's say, the investments that will be put on the infrastructure sector of Azerbaijan, and it's very important in the improvement of the logistics and trans-logistics. It's about delivering goods safely with the modern technology, with digitalization, and the document actually considering the continue of the partnership in a very broad perspective. And also, due to protocol, it's planned to investment about more than $1.5 billion. And also, it's all about new centers of digitalization, of data centers, and it's all about how Azerbaijan can be a really valuable partner in all these financial systems. And I think that if all the, let's say, investments will be put in Azerbaijan, and if all the projects will be productive, the Azerbaijan can be the major financial trendy country in South Caucasus.
You've mentioned digitalization and data centers there. Now, among all of those meetings in Davos, there was also one with Dell on establishing a supercomputer center in Azerbaijan. What can you tell us about what that could bring?
Well, actually, if we listen to the interviews of the President Ilham Aliyev and his statements, he always emphasized the need of the AI, the AI technologies, digitalization, and transforming to the digital economy. Why? Because if the supercomputers will be in Azerbaijan, and it will be due to the partnership with Dell Technologies. First of all, we should talk about that the data will be concluded and they will gather it, like pulling up in Azerbaijan is the major advantage. The second one, we will precede all the data that we have by the supercomputers. I will tell that the closest supercomputer to Azerbaijan is in Kazakhstan, but they are using it on an academic basis. Okay, we will use it for the improvement of the infrastructure, for the potential of the improvement of digitalization, and I think that it will be used effectively in Middle Corridor, in the transforming of goods, in Alat port, for example, and also on the Trip Corridor, because due to the plan, along the Trip Corridor, there will be 2 or 3, maybe more, data centers. And I think that it will, first of all, attract more investments from other countries. Maybe next year on the World Economic Forum, we will see new documents, new major world companies will sign a new agreement with Azerbaijan. It can be. And secondly, of course, the improvement of non-oil sector is one of the key cores of the foreign policy, I will say, and of the economic vision of Azerbaijan till 2030. And due to this, of course, we need to understand how important it is, not for Azerbaijan, but also for the region. And third, I will think that if we want, for example, the Central Asian countries are doing really great on AI, and I can say that maybe we have very few AI experts, but I try to expertise myself on AI ethics and AI in decision making. If we will use the AI in governance, in public sector, in the development of infrastructure, in the digital economy, as well as in the green energy, because using AI in green energy is one of the main trends in the world. If we will all gather it together, we can level up our AI vision and can be on the same stage or even upper than Central Asian countries, which most of them using the AI policy driven by the China because they're close to China. We can take something from China, something from US, something from the Middle East countries, from Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and etc. I think that we can make a good mix, but in this case, we need to understand how the data should be perceived, how AI should be perceived ethically, how data should be used safely. But I think that, in further, we will see more and more new information on the AI strategy of Azerbaijan.
Very interesting indeed. Nargiz, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts.
Hi, thank you.
And thank you very much for watching. That's all we have for you for now. Stay tuned to A News.